Welcome to the Be Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Hello from a very rainy Seattle. Today's the kind of day that people who don't live here or who've never visited, they think that every day is like this. It's bleak, rainy, really rainy, and it's gray. In truth, it's not always like this. Today just happens to be super bleak. And so it's been nice. I've been hunkered down pretty much, except for a run this morning. I've been hunkered down pretty much all day in my office. So that's okay. I can ignore that. But it's December. The sun doesn't come up until about 8 in the morning, and it's dark at about 4 in the afternoon. So you have to get creative and drink lots of tea throughout the day and just hope that there's a clearing so you can at least get out for a walk or something. In any case, thank you so much for being with me, and a special welcome if you're new to the podcast. I know you've got lots of listening options, and that this time of year specifically, your attention is focused on a lot of other things. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. I have an incredibly special guest today. It's world champion freediver Tanya Streeter. And I'll get to an introduction to her and that conversation in just a moment. But in the meantime, I wanted to let you know that I now have only a few Be Bold bracelets left for Patreon supporters. As you may be aware, I just launched my Patreon page. And that can be found at patreon.com/bebold. Now, this is a way for you to support the podcast and become part of the Be Bold community. Now, Patreon, for those who don't know, it's a platform that allows people to support content creators like me. Podcasts are free, of course, and I really believe that they should remain that way because I really want as many people as possible to have access to these conversations. But it's definitely not free to produce these. Between paying my editor and recording these conversations in person, the costs can really add up. And frankly, I would just love your vote of confidence that you're enjoying these enough to show some support. It's kind of like voting for me, to continue them, like you're giving me the big high five and saying, yes, I want more of those. Now, you might think that a small contribution doesn't matter, but I'm here to tell you that it absolutely does. I'm delighted to have supporters already. Some of them I know personally and some I don't. But these are people who have told me they've followed up in an email and they've said they've joined me in the Patreon community because they love what I'm doing and they want to support it and they want me to continue these podcasts. So basically, for $5, the cost, I don't know, of a scone at Starbucks or really like that specialty chocolate bar you grabbed at the checkout line at the grocery store, for $5, you can be a patron of the Be Bold podcast. And the kicker is that right now, the first 10 people to sign up as patrons will receive either a Be Bold bracelet or a Be Bold baseball cap, your choice. And I have, as I said, just a few bracelets left at this point. Now, I've had people reach out to me and they want to just buy one of the bracelets outright. That's cool and all, but right now they are only available to Patreon supporters. So if you're an early adopter, now is your chance. Now, in addition, as a patron, you'll also have access to bonus audio content. For now, this content will include questions I've asked guests that have been on the show, and these questions and answers have not been part of the main content. So no one has heard these yet, and they will be available only to Patreon supporters. So please, while you're listening to this, just pop over to patreon.com/bebold and join me there with a big $5. Hey, there's also karma points involved, right? You get good karma. Anyway, you'll find a link to the Patreon page in the show notes, so you can click directly to that. And the show notes are wherever you listen to this podcast, as well as on the BeBoldPodcast.com website. So thank you so much for your support. Hey, also, you have until December 22nd to leave a message at 877-280-5170. And I want to hear your story about what you've done to be bold, large or small, whatever it is. Let me know. just leave that on that voicemail line. And please, when you're leaving the message, actually tell me what it is you're doing to be bold, because I'd like to air it as is. I'm not going to just repeat the information myself, but I'm going to actually play your voice. So if it's something that has stretched you a bit or you are uncomfortable with, but you did it anyway, that's what I'm looking for. I'll then share it in an end of year wrap up episode. That's 877-280-5170. That number is going to be in the show notes as well. So, okay, today's guest is Tanya Streeter. Tanya is a world champion freediver. She holds the record, which was set in 2002 when she dove to a depth of 525 feet. Now, you'll have to listen to this episode and then watch a video of the dive to understand exactly how this type of free dive is done, because it may not be exactly what you'd think, and I'm not going to try to describe it here. She does a great job of it, but until you see it, it really makes sense. Anyway, she held that record for both men and women for more than 2 months, but she still holds the women's record. And again, that was over 16 years ago. Now, the crazy thing is that she managed to secure that record on a day when things didn't go quite right for her. And she does talk about it in this episode just a little bit. Specifically, she blacked out right before she was doing the dive. And I mean seconds before the dive, but she managed to do it anyway. I'm not sure that I've spoken to anyone whose accomplishment sounds so absolutely petrifying to me. You want to talk about being bold. As she says, you really need cojones to do something like she's done. This accomplishment is really off the charts. What I'd love for you to do is listen to this episode, then watch a YouTube video. It's about 50 minutes long or so. It's called No Limits. Just Google it. And I'll also link to it in the show notes. So listen to the episode, watch No Limits, and then come back and re-listen to this episode, because it will take on new meaning for you. I promise. It's just crazy. So anyway, I don't want to say too much. I'm going to let Tanya speak because she's just got this great story. You will be inspired by this conversation, I know, with world champion freediver Tanya Streeter. I found this coffee cup, and I got it for my husband because I just knew he would love it. And it's a little coffee cup that says, "I didn't get up this morning to be ordinary." Yeah. And so it's a great way to start the day, just to have that thought.
These are good things to pass on to my little person.
Yeah, exactly.
She's at a very impressionable 10 years old. She needs all those truths and all that.
We all do.
I know.
Absolutely do. You know, I want to start with something just kind of maybe relevant or not relevant to the conversation today, but I want to talk about this because I just got back from the Galapagos, and I know you've spent time down there.
Yes.
And you've spent time diving, is that right?
I have, yes. I was working with the BBC on, it's long, 2005, I think it was, that we were down there.
That was yesterday.
Sure it was. I've had 2 babies since then.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
But yeah, and I had the opportunity to be on a boat for, in fact, 3 weeks because I added a week. I had my mum come down and do an extra kind of week of holiday because I thought that's just something she would love, and there's no way once you're there,
right,
you make the most of it. And so 2 weeks we're filming, and yeah, it's the most magical place. And obviously I get asked very, very frequently, where would you say, where's the best place to dive? Where would you this is the place you got to go. And Galapagos every time. Well, I do, just because I think there's so much of it that's, it's changing so rapidly, which is heartbreaking, but it is still one of the most special spots to see wildlife and to truly understand how fragile everything is, because you go there and it's so much better than so many other places in the world in terms of the environment and ecosystems and stuff being protected and systems in place to protect such an amazing place. But then once you start to get to the backstory and you realize how much it's being impacted and how quickly it could all vanish, it's just magical, and it's an eye-opener. It's a really cool place.
Well, what was your favorite island? Did you travel around the different islands?
Yes, we did. And all right, what was my favorite island? That's going to be tough because I can't remember where we shot what. But we had a really lovely sequence with penguins, which I never in a million years thought I would find myself in the water with. And, that's pretty far north for penguins, but they're the ones that are right there on the equator. And that was super fun, but I can't remember what island that was on. And then I just had this ridiculous moment when we went up north to Wolf and Darwin, and I can't remember which island it was, whichever one it is that just has the most beautiful natural bay with cliff faces up. And I don't know. Anyway, I was on the boat, and this was in the 3rd week. So this was the kind of vacation week, and I just kind of needed to get away from all the other people on the boat. Mm-hmm. I was kind of done by that point. I was like ready to go home.
Were you sleeping on the boat?
Sleeping on the boat, yeah, mm-hmm. Which is great and magical. But I went up to the bow of the boat, and the stars were just crazy. And it was like a true God moment. I was like, oh, this is our planet. Like, this is where we live. This is crazy.
Yeah, I've
seen
that too.
And how lucky am I to ever see this and to be out. And for me, it was just magical to be on the water and see it, because that's my element. So, the sound of the water, these really fresh memories of being in the water with all these amazing animals. And I love filming, and our crew for that series is they're just like the most amazing people. You make these really bizarrely tight relationships when you live together on a boat.
Yeah, of course.
Even if you've never met that person before.
You bond really quickly.
Yes, you're just instantly in love. Or you absolutely detest.
Yeah.
I always just pray I'm not that one person on the boat that nobody wants to be with, because there is always one. And when you get in a good crew and there's not one, you go, oh shit, maybe it's me.
Well, yeah, but when you're aware of it, when you're aware there could be a person,
maybe that instantly makes you not. So yeah, Galapagos is it's a treasure. We should be treating the whole planet better than we treat Galapagos. But it's,
Do you see efforts like on the Great Barrier Reef or elsewhere, Belize? I mean, I'm thinking of these as big diving spots. Do you see that there's efforts that are leaning toward that? Or do you just think that we're screwed?
No, I don't think we're screwed. I think without hope is when you're screwed. And I think that we do have hope. I mean, the current ridiculous debate about climate change might lead you to think, oh my gosh, if there's one person on the planet that thinks that climate change isn't real, we're screwed. But no, there's a lot of people that understand what's going on and the changes that we have to make. And so I have hope that science will prevail. And when it comes to those barrier reefs, like in Belize and Australia, I think we get news flashes of things, good and bad, and we tend to form our opinions on those. And it's really easy when we're globally, people are trying to raise awareness for what we're putting the planet through. You tend to only get the bad news. And I'm not saying, oh, don't listen to it, it's not true. I'm just saying there are good things that are happening, especially on a local level. There are people who are working really hard to make changes and to protect areas, and most importantly, to educate young people about what it is that we've kind of screwed up for them and that they need to work at. To protect and to preserve, because long before I had kids, I would get so emotional about the idea that my child may never see a coral reef the way that I saw it. And, the exact coral reef that I was thinking of that I was on as a child, it doesn't exist in the same way, and that breaks my heart. But there are still places that do. And nature is one strong lady. She can turn it around if she has good teammates, and we just have to be good teammates.
I'm confident that Mother Nature will prevail. I don't know that humans will prevail.
Oh, no. We are doomed. Yeah, for sure. And thank God for that, because otherwise the planet would be. No, I do. I mean, nature will prevail.
I mean, look at California, right? The wildfires. Yes. And that is Mother Nature prevailing over humans.
Saying this is what we used to do. This is what we need to carry on doing. And it's heartbreaking, and it's a reality of increasing populations and us taking over wild spaces and things like that. But yeah, as a human race, we won't survive the way that we're going. We need to evolve. And I'm not talking about evolving to, better cell phones and cars that fly. I'm talking about evolving to be partners with planet Earth and Mother Nature.
The way indigenous people did.
Yes, and still do, in certain places. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Have you been, speaking of Galapagos and Ecuador, have you been to the rainforest there? Okay. Because I just also, after the Galapagos, I went on to the Amazon rainforest, and that's just like, that's
bucket list for me.
Yeah, it's great. I'll take you there.
Oh, yay.
So, let's just go with this kind of the environmental thing. I thought we might finish up with it, but since we're headed down that path, let's go with that. And I'll just tell you that you jumped on my radar because of A Plastic Ocean. And I will be right up front with you and tell you I could only watch 20 minutes of it.
Yeah.
But in the 20 minutes that I watched changed my life. And in a way, I wish I could say like, oh, it changed my life for the better. In a way, it changed my life for the worse.
Yes, I know. Sorry.
Yeah, because now I'm so much more aware. And, it's great to be more aware. But when you are more aware, there's like a lot of pain that comes with that,
there
too.
Is. And yes. My daughter, while I was in the beginning stages of the film, she was pretty young. I would say around about 5. And we had stopped at a gas station, and there was a woman coming out of the gas station carrying clearly one item in a plastic bag, and she burst out crying. And I think as humans, 5-year-olds just live their emotions, right? But as a 45-year-old, I feel the same thing. I just, I contain it in a different way.
Do you get angry?
Mommy, you have to stop her. You have to tell her. And it's going to make me cry. And I said, darling, we are, we're making a film. We're going to tell everybody. And I said, I can't rush up and tell the strange lady she may be packing. We're in Texas. But it was really one of those things. She was angry. It doesn't make me angry. I can't be angry at people that aren't educated on the issue. Yeah, I sure get mad at my friends when they've seen the film and I catch them in the grocery store buying straws, plastic straws. I'm like, no. And I can put them back. And then I go to Amazon and buy them some metal straws.
Some metal straws, right. Which is a purchase that I just recently made.
Well done.
I bought a gift for my husband for his birthday earlier this year, and we got like 6 metal straws that we now carry with us, when we travel.
Yes, yes.
But little things, and I'm far from perfection. I don't want to claim that at all, because I still catch myself doing little things. Yep. But I am just so much more aware after watching that movie, and just for days after watching it, I could taste plastic in my throat,
yes.
And I could just see those birds. And
it's a tough watch. It's a very, very, very important film. I get to say that because it is. It's from no other place than it just is, and because it's also not the only film out there. But it is an important one, and it's, as far as the issues and the solutions, I think it's a pretty good film. It's a long, heavy watch, and I hear a lot of feedback of the same thing. Like, I had to watch it in bits, so I just, we had to pause and take a break. And it's the biggest issue, I think, that we face in terms of our everyday, every moment, sort of infestation of the issue. The beauty of it is that we have enormous powers as individuals. And one of the things that we were talking about, like, it kind of makes you sad, it makes you angry. And, I wish you hadn't told me, because now I have to do X, Y, Z, and I have all this guilt about what I did before. And that's A-okay. Because your power as an individual, the things that you do, and even if it's just one thing, it's huge. It's one thing. I saw a meme the other day that was about straws, because of course that at the moment is it's a really easy issue to get a hold of. And let's be honest, unless you're 2 or have a medical need, what the fuck do you have a straw for? Excuse my language. Yeah. And so I saw this meme, and it was like, oh, it's just a plastic straw, in parentheses said 8 billion people. And that's, by saying no to a plastic straw, or by asking your waiter, hey, we don't need straws at this table. I don't care who I'm sitting with. I'll be like, we don't need straws at this table.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. That's a big thing. So lots of little things, or one little thing, has a big impact. And the education that you disseminate with your words and with your actions are huge. And that's why I have hope. I just have a huge amount of hope and faith that we will end up doing the right thing by this planet.
Yeah, I hope so. You had mentioned there are other documentaries or movies out there about the issue. Do you know any others off the top of your head? I know another one that I had watched was The True Cost, which was about the fast fashion industry.
Oh.
And how we've become used to changing our fashion every 2 weeks, know, and
not so much me.
Yeah, I know. Well, me neither.
Yeah. So the 2 ladies in the jeans that are like 15 years old.
Exactly. Yeah. But the idea that clothes they're so cheap that they are meant to be thrown away, basically, and not used over and over and over. But so The True Cost is one, but are there other ones about?
Gosh, I'd have to rack my brains.
Okay.
I'll be perfectly honest with you. But I do have a girlfriend who's very heavily involved in sustainable fashion, and just watching what she's doing, it just opens your eyes to where all of these issues are, the disposable lifestyles that we all live now.
Even with cell phones, I'm shocked. Like, my laptop is 8 years old or
Yeah.
something. And it's still in very good working order. And I'm shocked that companies are, gosh, what is the term for it? There's a specific term for just like kind of the throwaway items where they expect things to die off
Yeah.
after, 5 years or something. And no, I want my
There's
whatever.
nothing wrong with it. It
No,
still works.
my popcorn maker. My popcorn maker's 20 years old and all like coming apart, but I refuse to
Because it
to
still
get
works.
because it still works.
Yeah, and it's
Exactly.
probably not got a whole bunch of plastic parts too,
No.
because it's 20 years old.
Well, true that. Yeah. Well, the plastic on it has broken off, but anyway. But I try to use things until the very end of their life. But what I'll do is I'll check back with you, and if you have some links or documentaries or anything, then I'll add those to the show notes, and that would be great. So I won't put you on the spot here for listing them off. But let's talk about, and we can come back to the environmental stuff, and I imagine that it's going to be kind of woven through this conversation, but let's talk about kind of your history and the amazing things that you have done. You hold the world record in freediving. Is that right?
I hold one still. Over the course of my career, I set 10, but there's one that's still hanging around.
And which one is that?
And that's called No Limits. It's 525 feet. It's where you're assisted with weight on the way down and with a lift bag that you have to operate at depth on the way back up. So the reality is that it's the deepest form of freediving, but it's kind of the least true. It's the least pure form. So
explain how that works. Now, I have seen a short video of you actually freediving. So I know what it is like. And it actually surprised me because when you think freediving, you think she's jumping in the water head first with fins on.
Thank
going
you for not asking me how high the platform is that
Oh,
I
my
took. Because I would be like, take the headphones off and
my
come back when you've done
goodness.
some research.
Oh my
No,
gosh.
yeah, that happens. Yeah, people do think of freediving as big cliff diving or something like that.
Well,
but
not even that. I wouldn't have even thought of it being diving from a high point, but even just off a boat. I was thinking, it would be more free going straight down.
Yeah,
like
well, it
head
is
down.
straight down. So there's a difference between head down, head up. So basically, I take it back a little bit. There are 5 different disciplines of freediving for depth, and there are 2 disciplines for freediving for distance, and then there's one that's just for time. Basically, anytime you're holding your breath, you're freediving. You're in apnea, right? And so there's static apnea, which is floating face down in a body of water, holding your breath. There's dynamic apnea, which is swimming for distance in a pool, typically a 25 or 50 meter pool. And then there's dynamic apnea without fins, which is doing exactly the same thing, but you don't have the big fins to propel you. I suck at all of the pool disciplines. I mean, I did accidentally set a world record in a heat once in the pool in Switzerland, surprised myself just as much as everybody else, and that record held for about 15 minutes until it was broken.
So you weren't actually going for a record.
No. But then the disciplines that I excelled at were the depth ones. And so from quote unquote shallowest to deepest, you have, first of all, a discipline where you wear no fins and you swim straight down and swim straight back up again. And you're not assisted in any way. Now, we always dive on a rope for a bunch of different reasons, safety being primarily the first one. It's also the correct way to measure the depth and sanction under the rules and regulations of the International Association is a nice straight rope from A to B. You can imagine that if you were going from 0 to 50 meters and you're traveling in a diagonal line, it's actually longer.
Right, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a straight line. It's safety. It keeps us all in the same place. ADA, which is the International Association for Freediving, basically lays out all of these rules with safety as the primary driver. And then after that, it becomes, what's fair. So we always dive on a rope. You're always lanyarded to the rope. So in the discipline called constant weight without fins, it's basically a form of breaststroke up and down the rope. And because you don't have big fins on to propel you and you're not being propelled or assisted with weight or a lift bag, it tends to be the quote unquote shallowest. I'll have to email you a list of the current world records because I don't even know what that is these days. The next 2, the next one is called constant weight, and it's where you fin down again. You don't pull on the rope. You fin down and you have the big long fins or a big monofin and you fin back up again. It's deeper because you have that great big surface area to propel yourself with the fins. There's something called free immersion, which is you don't wear the fins, but you get to pull on the rope. And the rope is weighted at the bottom. So you're pulling against essentially something static. So again, you're propelling yourself. You're not using these tiny little hands and tiny little feet to get through the water. You're getting to pull. And then there is something called variable weight. And that's where you ride that metal contraption, which we refer to as a sled, which looks nothing like a sled. It's a glorified aluminum framework that runs down the rope. It has a braking system. They're all designed like a little bit different. It is like a T with kind of a fin bin, because you do have fins on, or at least I used to wear fins to do it in case anything happened and I needed it. And so, and in variable weight, you wear fins because you propel yourself back up again. So the weight that you use on the dive is variable. You take a bunch down because it propels you. You hold on, and then you have to propel yourself back up again.
And variable meaning you get to choose the weight based on...
Variable meaning that whatever you take with you, you leave it at the bottom. It varies throughout the dive. And you can choose. You want to take a lot to get down fast, and then you don't want to take any going back up again.
But the weight doesn't determine a certain a certain weight class in terms of hold it under a work. It's more like a bowling ball physical, where you get to choose the weight that's good for you.
I think under the rules there's a maximum, but yes, basically yes. And then there's no limits. And no limits, it's the most extreme version of the sport. There's no limit to the amount of weight you can take on the way down or the amount of lift that you can use on the way back up again. The only limit is within yourself. Like if you can't travel super fast, then you don't want to take a bunch of weight and all the rest of it. So we the deeper we go, we get further away from the most natural way to do it. I mean, you think about...
That makes sense.
Ancient man, early man, and cultural subsistence beside the sea. It was harvesting seashells, and then eventually it might have been swimming and diving, but it didn't involve any fins early on. And then you think about freediving. Today, I think of freediving as being a mask and some fins, because that's how I spearfish. That's how I go have fun. And that's true freediving. You're effectively unassisted. But the reality, I think, of every sport, especially in extreme sport, you're always going to be asked in the sport of freediving, how long can you hold your breath and how deep can you dive? And people don't really care if you were holding your breath on your couch or if you're holding your breath face down in the pool, which is when world records are sanctioned, or if you rode a sled to get to your deepest point, or if you did breaststroke to get to your deepest point. They're just going to say, what's your deepest? And so, the discipline of no limits, the purists among us kind of go, yeah, that's great. But it's not the real thing.
And so the one that you hold the record in
is still that one.
Okay.
Yeah, which, you would think, well, wait, why are you saying that?
Well, that's why. I was like, wait.
Why? Well, I mean, I'm saying it first of all, I mean, I set records in all of the other disciplines, and that's great. It's not that I only specialized in no limits and was never a real freediver. But I really have this thing about taking credit away from athletes today who are diving so much deeper than I ever did in all but one discipline.
What is the deepest dive of any of the disciplines right now? Do you know?
Well, it's mine. Of any of the disciplines, it's 160 meters.
Oh, it's still
525 feet. Yeah, that one still exists.
I see,
yeah, and initially it was for men and for women, and eventually the guys came along and broke it. But so that one is. But I literally want to just pick up the rug and just sweep it under there, because to me it's huge, and it's mentally very, very demanding. And there's a reason it hasn't been broken yet. It's hard to break it. It's a very deep record. There's a lot of things that you face with no limits that you don't face with the other disciplines, not least of which is the reliance on equipment. Because don't forget, the reason that we love this sport is because you don't have any equipment. And all of a sudden you're riding this sled down and you're just kind of giving away this control to equipment.
Yeah.
So it's a bit foreign for freedivers. But also, it's expensive. It's scary.
It's expensive because you have to practice a lot, and you have to practice in certain waters.
It's expensive because if you're going to do it properly and put the right safety in place, you have to pay a lot of people. There's a lot of equipment. It does take time. Yes, all of the above. I mean, the other disciplines you can, except for variable weight. Anytime you're using a sled, you need a boat. You need a different setup. The other disciplines, there are less expensive ways to safely do them.
Other than financial, what is, and I'm sorry to cut you off there, but other than financial, what do you think is the biggest barrier preventing someone from breaking your record?
Gosh, I'd love to say that I don't think about that, and I don't know. I think, well, I backtrack. People have tried. The first person that tried lost her life.
After you?
After me.
Who was that?
Audrey Mestre, she was a French girl. And that was very soon after. That was 6 weeks afterwards. And we were all reeling for quite a long time after that. But the reason that it happened was so clearly safety. At the very best, it was just safety. At the very worst, it was a premeditated act of homicide. And that's another story of itself, which there's a great film that ESPN did. Actually, it's kind of right up your alley. It was under the 30 for 30 series, but it was 9 for 9 because it was 9 films made about women by female directors.
Oh,
and it was celebrating 40 years of Title IX. So it's one of those films. It's easy to find on Vimeo or YouTube, and it's called No Limits. And it's a look into the safety and the issues of what happened. And it's a pretty good look, actually, at the sport of No Limits. Yeah, that shook and continues to shake our world, because then 2 more divers went on to lose their lives in training for the No Limits record. No, men. One man beat it. Gosh, this is going back 15 years, more than 15 years now. So a very good friend of mine, a Frenchman, beat it, and then he lost his life training to then surpass his men's record. No woman has ever come back. There was another woman that tried, and she just couldn't get to the depth. She subsequently went on to lose her life freediving, but it wasn't in that discipline.
What happens when you're going down and you're partway down and you have to come back up? Do you just jiggle the rope and they pull you back up, or what?
No,
or do you make your own choice to come back up?
Yeah, if that I'm a bit uneducated in how to answer that question, because I didn't allow that to happen. And that's for better or worse. I can't sit here and say like I'm hugely proud of that fact.
But you must have been trained in this is what you do when you're
yes. If you want to bail, you bail. If you want to bail, you let go of the giant heavy sled, and you go back up again. And if you're super, super deep, then you take the lift bag back up again. If it's swimmable, then you swim back up again.
And how many minutes? And I'm sorry,
No, it's okay.
I have to keep interrupting because I'm so fascinated with it, because it is so beyond my comprehension. Like I know, just intellectually how it's done, or, I've seen information about it, read information, seen the videos, but it's just beyond me. So how many minutes were you holding your breath on that 525?
3 minutes, 32 seconds, I think. And my best breath hold to that point was 6.5 minutes in that static float face down in the pool situation. And the reality of No Limits is that the breath hold aspect of it is not what limits you at all. It's your ability to equalize, to clear your ears, to remain comfortable.
And calm.
And calm. But, you shouldn't be on a sled if you can't do that. And most people, by the time they get on a sled, it's that they've mastered how to stay calm in the water. And the other thing, quite honestly, is cahones. I mean, your strength of mind, your guts, your grit. Like how badly can you do it? Because it hurts. It's deep. There's nothing that feels right about it.
So how do you find strength of mind if nothing feels right when you're headed down and it doesn't feel right? Where do you get the mental fortitude?
That is a good question, and I love that you asked it. I always wonder going into interviews, like, is anybody going to ask me something that I haven't been asked before?
Well, is that?
Woohoo! Yeah,
No.
I mean, yeah, it's because you're very specific to it. I'm sure I've covered the issue because I would have got round to it in conversation, but to come out with a direct question about, where do you find it?
Yeah, but that's the gem of life.
It is, but most people look at freediving as being so extreme that the whole picture is, well, how do you do this? Because they're just relating it to themselves as being just so foreign. But when you look at, okay, freediving is now not foreign to you, Tanya, but there's a foreign element that day that you wake up and everything is going wrong. How do you still go out there and do it? And I am confident that I have faced that a few times, and the classic one happens to be on the actual world record day for that actual 160-meter dive, 525 feet, because nothing was going right. It was a little rough. The sea was a little rough. It was throwing me around a little bit. And I did something that we refer to as overpacking, which is packing volume of air into your lungs. And you take a deep breath, like... exhale before I pass out. That sucking sound that you hear at the end is the packing. So you watched me take a deep breath, kind of using my whole, from the hips up almost. And then you have no more muscular ability to add any more volume, but you can do it by this sucking with your mouth and your lips, and you're not swallowing air, you're pushing it down into your lungs. It took me ages to learn how to do that, but basically what it means on these really deep dives is you gain depth through your ability to equalize deeper and deeper because you have the volume of air in your lungs. My regular lung capacity at my size, we're about the same size. I think our lung capacity is somewhere between 3.5 and 4 liters. That's what healthy women of our size would be about. My actual lung capacity is a little over 7 liters, and that's because I've expanded my rib cage. I've found ways to put more volume of air in my lungs, and one of the ways is that packing. The downside to packing is it creates a lot of intrathoracic pressure, so it actually puts pressure on the heart and it inhibits it from beating properly. So instead of going boom, 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 you've now got a situation where your heart is going do, 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 and it's just not effectively pumping blood around your body, especially to your brain. And so I overpacked, put too much pressure on my heart. It caused me a very transient loss of consciousness. So I blacked out. This is me breathing at the surface. This is me before I've begun my dive, my last few minutes before the dive. In fact, it was in the last 20 seconds because the final count was given, 0 was given, and that's when I take my last breath.
And you'd had a little blackout.
I know, and then I started packing.
Okay.
And I think under the rules then it was either 20 or 30 seconds to begin the dive before then they call it off. And that's because there's a lot of safety divers underwater. It's like NASA timing at that point. You have to leave at a certain time because your deepest diver is at 500 feet and he's expecting you and he has a very limited bottom time and it's all about safety. So I took this deep breath, I packed, I briefly blacked out, I woke up, I said, oh my gosh, I blacked out, I overpacked. I looked at the judge and I said, can I still go? And he was kind of thinking through his rules and he said, well, yeah, there's no rule at that point that you can't go after you've blacked out at the surface. There's only rules about blacking out afterwards that make you disqualified.
So then did you have to start over and then
I didn't start over. I just got one breath. I just got one rapido breath. So instead of leaving A, calm, B, physiologically in the best condition, and C, with my maximum lung capacity, I probably left with about 80% of my lung capacity. So instantly, there's no reason why I should be able to make my maximum depth because I'm already getting off to a bad start. I don't have 100%. I don't have my 7 liters. I don't know what I did have, but I didn't have what I had determined that I needed. I'd done the record depth about a week before, maybe a little bit less than a week before. So I had it in the bag. I knew I could do it. And now it's just like, you got to be able to do it when it counts and all the judges and the media and stuff are there.
What would have happened if you said, oh, gosh, give me another half hour?
No, there was no half hour. It's you do it then
done.
or you do it the next day because the divers can't be down at those depths and can't go down again. They certainly can't wait for you. So there's no that you do it then or you don't do it that day. And actually, because of the depths that those divers are, you probably would have to wait until 2 days later. So to answer your question, long story longer, how do I find what it takes? It's some good old guilt. You know what, Tanya, everybody else is in the water today doing their best. The least you can do is try all the way down the rope.
That's what also can kill you.
Yes. And that's why I said or I alluded to the fact that I'm not particularly proud of how driven I can be because, and this really is hard, especially as a mother now, to think that I have this in me. I don't always recognize the very, very fine line between pushing hard and pushing too hard. I'm not proud to say that is not the only situation that I've been in where I've jeopardized myself and worse, other people because I haven't recognized a point that is, okay, you're pushing too hard now.
Were those other circumstances also diving?
Yes, but I was not the one in complete control. I made the decision to be there, but I relinquished control underwater. Not free diving, scuba diving, which, side note, is so very much more dangerous than free diving. So back to this dive, I've set off, and my first thought is, or my first words from my proverbial devil on the shoulder are, who do you think you are? You can't do this. You can't start the biggest dive of your life, the biggest dive in the history of this sport on such a bad start. And then, my angel pipes in, just try. Because my philosophy with freediving, I got 2 really, really big ones, 3 at a stretch, but 2 really, really big ones. And one of them is, and this is very specific to this sport, if it's not something physical that is stopping you, it's all up here. It is all mental. I could tell myself all day long, you can't do a dive after you've blacked out. You can't do a world record dive on 80% of your lung capacity. But you know what? I've got this other thing, this thing. I'm going to go ahead and call it an angel because it's a lot nicer than some of the other ways I look at it. This drive of, well, at least just try.
I would look at that and say, that's your devil.
Oh, yes, I know that, but I don't want to call it that. Okay. I'm going to stick with angel.
Okay.
Because, yeah, I mean, the devil in that situation was probably right. This is not your day, Tanya. This is not your day. But I made it my day. And I think that's really what your question is how do you find a way to be the best version of yourself when everything looks awful? So within the realms of safety.
Right. No, so that aside, and the fact that you do recognize that sometimes you do go overboard with it, I'm also talking about, like, for 45 years, I told myself I wasn't a runner because when I ran from here to the mailbox, I was out of breath. And I thought that meant that I wasn't able to run. And once I got past the mailbox and I was just determined to run a mile or 3 miles, I realized that here to the mailbox was just my body getting used to running. But I told myself for a really long time that I wasn't a runner. And I know that there's a lot of people out there people tell me personally a lot that, oh yeah, I can't run because of X. And they will tell you that it's a physical thing, just as I told myself it was a physical thing. So I know because I've been through it with certain things where I have gotten over that mental blocker that has stopped me from doing something. But I haven't been able to unwrap why it is.
So you've set me up beautifully for my second little nugget.
Please.
So my first one is, if it's not something physical, it's mental, which leads immediately to my favorite of all time, which I really came to see through the course of my freediving. And that is that your mind is either going to be your weapon or your weakness. And it is just a choice. It's no harder than deciding whether you're going to have tea or coffee, whether you're going to hit snooze one more time. Sometimes that's actually harder, as in the case of me this morning, trying to get out of bed to go spin. So your mind is either going to be your weapon or your weakness, and you just have to make the choice. And believe me, I have moments that I remember so clearly in my freediving early on, long before this big world record, telling myself with my cat on my lap, talking to my cat, saying, buddy, I'm going to be back, think of me, because I have completely illogical thoughts about my pets. Saying to myself, okay, in 3.5 hours, I'm going to be back. I have to be tough for 3.5 hours. That's it.
And that's a short period of time.
Oh, but it gets shorter if you're a freediver. We're talking about 3.5 minutes here. That the old, you can do anything for 3 minutes. And I kind of, and this is way before I'd given any thought to the mental side of it, I had this idea that once I closed the door of my house, I was flicking the switch in my mind. I'm going now. My mind is my weapon. I'm unstoppable. And it makes every hair on my body stand up, even just saying that and remembering that person, because it's pretty distant. And I see glimmers these days, of who that person is. And I recognize in particular the way that I parent now is also full on, nothing less than perfect. Never give up. And by the way, I fail. Side note, I am not a perfect parent, but I strive. And so I would kiss my cat goodbye and get up and have a moment just with the door. Okay, now I'm going to do it. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's 10:30. My official top, which is my dive time, is at 12. I will be back here by 1. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at 3 hours. I can do this. And then on the boat, I'd be thinking, okay, 30 minutes. And then literally there is a countdown during the dive. 10 minutes to official top, 2 minutes to official top. When it's 2 minutes to official top, I'm thinking 5.5 minutes and I'm back here and this is done. 0, 3.5 minutes and I'm back here and it's done. I just have to be the best version of myself in this setting for 3.5 minutes. And the beauty of it is that it's amazing what it teaches you about yourself. It's a little bit like the plastic thing, like, dang it, now I know I'm that good. I got to push harder. And sometimes that's the scariest thing. The toughest record I ever had to break was breaking my own record in a different discipline. But it really was like, I already have this.
Did you break it?
Oh, I did, yes. Okay. Yeah.
Because that's got to be harder.
Yes, it was. Because
it's like,
I literally am not winning anything by doing this except personal, except that personal battle, which is at the end of the day, that's why I started. And that's what carries on the longest. Records will be gone for years and years and years, but I still have that personal growth that I went on a journey of discovery, of self-discovery and self-empowerment. And yeah, I overstepped the boundary a few times, and I'm definitely not proud of those moments. But you don't learn when you succeed. You learn when you fail. And so, I was able to sort of recalibrate things after each quote unquote failure. And interestingly, I'm not referring to any failure in dive, like not making my depth or not getting a world record, because I never did fail at that. I consider the failures to be more of when I pushed too hard. Yes, it's the world record that stood for over 15 years. It's not the one I'm the most proud of.
So what got you into freediving to begin with?
Because I was born and raised in the Cayman Islands. We did not have much to do in the 70s on a tiny little island. I'm the child of a divorced family, and the sea just became a really solid place for me of safety predominantly. And I think as a child, you don't even know what that is, but the fact that that's where I would rather be than
Were you surfing
inside.
Or were you
No,
just,
I was snorkeling.
just swimming? Oh, you were just snorkeling.
Yeah, swimming.
So you would just go
snorkeling.
spend hours at a time.
I would spend hours in these rock pools underneath a dock, kind of near where we lived, and then I was out at sea. I was snorkeling. I was a kid that would sit on the beach waiting for the dolphin to be my friend for the rest of my life. Never had that moment.
And was it on the Caymans that you heard about freediving?
Yes, it was actually. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s. I was hanging out with a couple of guys, friends of my husband's, that used to spearfish on a Saturday.
So you were married?
I was married by then.
Okay.
Yeah. And they said, hey, there's a guy coming down to teach a freediving clinic. And I was like, what's that? And they said, well, that's what you're doing. You're freediving. Because I would go along. I wasn't spearfishing at that point, just because I just hadn't done it. I just never held a gun. But I would help them retrieve the guns or spot fish or just anything to be in the water. I'm like, awesome.
So when you're spearfishing, and again, apologies for all the interruptions, but I'm just like, I've got to know more about this. So spearfishing, the only time I've ever seen spearfishing is when I'm in another country like Papua New Guinea, where there's a little boy on the side of a riverbank with a spear. And he's throwing it in the water.
Yes.
This is different.
So this is different. This is underwater hunting. This is, you have a spear gun and you hold your breath and you dive on fish and you try to shoot them. It's a very, very it's the most environmentally sustainable way to
because you're doing one
fish
one
because
off,
you're
right.
selective.
Not doing a big
it's
sweep.
super, super hard. You're not top of the food chain.
Yep.
You also can't hold your breath forever. I'm not a fan of scuba diving and spearfishing. I feel that is not
a little
cool.
cheating.
So I would go out with Bill and Neil, and we would, we'd hang out. We'd do a little diving. They would spearfish. I would help them. They said, hey, we're not going out this Saturday. We're going to go do this course. You should come along. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I got there and I was the only girl there. And it was the first time that anybody had given me any tips about anything to do with freediving. And it was literally the first time I think I'd even heard the word. I just didn't, to me, we were just snorkeling deeper than everybody else. And I got a bit of a bug that day for sure. I was like, I like this, because it was just me out there pushing myself. It was the first time, and I was 23 or 24 years old. And it was the first sort of aha moment of do everything you've been told to do and see what your body will allow you to do. And this is the backdrop, against the backdrop of being an athlete my whole life up until that point, and actually a pretty good lacrosse player. That was my thing, but I hadn't, nothing had really, well, I ruptured all my ligaments a bunch playing lacrosse. So no running excuse.
Is that truly physical or is that mental?
I don't know. 9 knee surgeries, man. You tell me.
Okay.
I'm going to go with physical.
I'll give you a pass on that. Yeah.
Sadly, because I really want to be a runner. Me and my dog. So yeah, I don't know. I probably should put a full stop after that, I think. But yeah, that's where I was introduced to freediving. That's where I suddenly more importantly, got introduced to the idea of me, myself, and I pushing me, myself, and I. And I'm not, no lie, it also came in at a point in my life where I had some other stuff to work out. I had to figure out where I fit. I had to figure out where everything meant, what everything meant, and where I was supposed to be. And As a child, I know going to the sea was a place of solace, a place of protection, a place of learning, playground. And now I kind of made it a playground and proving ground for myself.
What was your home life like? You mentioned a split, a divorce. Was there pressure from either of your parents to succeed, or?
I don't remember that. No, it was just rocky. It was just difficult. It just wasn't.
Were you out to prove something?
I don't know. That's why I love these interviews.
It's attention?
Like free therapy.
Yeah, I know. I talked to Pam about that yesterday too. I said, I'll be back tomorrow for the therapy session. Yeah.
I don't know. I think I would be doing my parents, certainly my mother, who raised me, a disservice by saying that. Was it more fun to be out in the sea than to be inside sometimes? For sure. And I think as a child, that's about as much as I could really, think it through. I was sent off to boarding school at the age of 9. And to me, that's where life got good. Apart from and I never cried saying goodbye, but I cried the second that plane banked over the beach. And that was hard for me to leave the sea because I was going off to England.
Oh, gosh. Oh, so boarding
just
school was in England.
Just 5,000 miles away. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think it was to prove anything to anybody other than myself. It never really has been. It was just for me, and I'm sure that's just some psychologists who'd be like, "Oh my gosh, let's just dive on in." But I don't know.
I'm thinking the same thing. Yeah, but that's me looking in. But just because I guess what it is that I need a reason to understand why you are so driven and I'm not.
I think that you are.
Well, you know what I mean.
To that specific thing,
right?
Listen. The sea is my is my road that you run on. Mm-hmm. Whatever you learn, all the battles that you go through in your mind and your body, in the 23rd mile, I do it. I just do it all at about 400 feet. Really, it's absolutely no different. And I mean, we can take that from running. We can take it to climbing. We can take it anywhere where the athlete is in their head. They can't afford to be anywhere else, and they're completely alone. There's nobody else with them.
I think maybe one of the ways to look at it, and let me know if you agree or not, is that we channel something that's affected us, and we channel it, and I would argue in a much more positive way. And it's like you wouldn't sit down with a heroin addict and say, tell me what. I mean, some heroin addicts will sit down with you. Maybe recovering heroin addicts will tell you what is driving them. But I think there's probably something in there, a truth that is driving that person to do something negative, that is driving us to do something that's more positive.
Yeah. I mean, full disclosure, I also have no childhood memories until I went away to boarding school. So I really couldn't tell you.
I thought you were going to say full disclosure. I was a heroin addict.
Not
but you weren't.
Yet.
Okay.
Time. No. No, I don't have any memories. So, I mean, it's entirely possible that I've long believed that your top athletes, we're all running from something, right? And I do know that each record that I attempted, each time I sat down and said, I'm going to go do another dive, it was because I was facing something on land in real life that I needed to run from, but I also just needed to go work it out in my head by myself. I needed to go on that journey again, to see how strong I was, to be able to put my big girl pants on and come back and deal with it.
Are you a swimmer? You're not a distance swimmer? Because
no, all of these things I want to be though.
Yeah, but no. that you can be. You're not.
Yes,
you don't have
there's a good chance
thing.
I can do that.
But no, I'm just thinking if you want to spend that time, I love my long runs. I'll go on a Sunday and do 20 to 22 miles for no reason. Yeah. I'm not necessarily.
No, I used to love my long road bike rides and go for 3 or 4 hours and go do that. But I like life a little bit too much, and it just got too dangerous here.
Bike riding.
Yeah, there's nothing like having a baby too to renew your sense of self-preservation. And Charlie's only 3, and I was still road biking while I was pregnant with him, and then after a while I was like, oh, this is just dumb. Austin's population has just grown, and it's not all the bike-friendly people that have moved here.
Yeah,
so it's a little nerve-wracking. Yeah, I recognize the fine line now between trying hard and trying too hard
because of the kids.
Yes, yeah, and I think as a woman, that's very, very
I don't
real.
have kids, so it's I think it's different.
But I think what you have in your nature is different to what a man has in their nature. I think your sense, look at it like this, statistically, people who die freediving are aged between 18 and 30 and have a penis. Okay, so that's and what does that tell you just biologically where men are?
Well, the testosterone.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that, we just have a physiological makeup that has us leaning more towards self-preservation and better decisions. So I don't think you have to have kids to be a more rational thinker when it comes to your own safety.
Well, I think it's a good topic too.
Yes,
Just that
I don't, truthfully, I don't know. I don't know what my true motivations are. I have these snippets, and I don't lie. Like, having this conversation with you will affect me for a few days. I did not talk about my world record dive to 160 meters, no limits, and what happened at the bottom of that rope for about 10 years, because I did run into some problems, because I pushed too hard. I ran into some problems that, had I not had the safety there, could have been absolutely tragic, and the reality of which ended up effectively being tragic for the person that went on to follow me and die. And the reason I didn't talk about it was because somebody lost their life in a very similar, potentially very similar setting. But I was able to, once I had kind of reconciled it, and these conversations like this and talking about these types of things do make me realize that I haven't calibrated it all yet. I don't know where it all fits. I don't know. I'm just the little blonde kid on the beach, right? I am absolutely no different. I don't have a third lobe in my lung. I'm not 8 foot tall with this massive lung capacity. I have mental strength, and I developed mental strength. I think once I realized that I had it, I just really, really ran with it. I think that there's a genetic component to that. My mother's a very pioneering spirit. She's an incredibly tough woman. My dad also. So it doesn't surprise me that I was going to push hard at whatever I did. And knowing my relationship with the sea, it doesn't surprise me that I ended up doing that in the sea. Before that, it was lacrosse, it was tennis, it was squash, it was volleyball, it was whatever I could do with a team. What surprised me the most about all of it was that it ended up being an individual sport, because that's not me. I like people too much. And it's an individual sport, as in it's only me that has the record to my name. Right. There's a whole bunch of people that I can't do it without.
It's not a team sport.
Yeah. And that's what sucks, is that their names aren't on the record. Yeah. So,
have you seen Free Solo? The
Alex,
climb? Yeah.
Yes.
Alex Honnold, yeah. Amazing. I just saw that a few nights ago and absolutely loved it. And after I saw the movie and I was talking to my friends about it, who I'd gone with, I said, everything, I mean, he's such a weird dude. I'm not taking anything away from him, but there had to be so many elements that came together to make him the guy to free solo El Capitan, because there's personality, there's lack of fear in his amygdala. There's so many things going on there. And I think, as I'm talking to you, I think it's the same thing. I think that there's, no, not that you're weird.
No. Oh, I'm full weird. No, okay. I embrace the full weird.
Well, I haven't seen that yet. So I'm not, that's not what I'm saying.
Maybe not socially, but I'm sure I've got some weird elements.
No, but what I'm saying is that there is something about you that makes you incredibly unique. Obviously, because you've held the record for so long, that has brought so many things together that makes you the woman that has held this record. And it's that mental fortitude that you have fostered so much over the years. And it's not having kids, when you were trying to do the record. Yeah. Right. I mean, there are so many things. And it just, I think we all have some kind of a unique ability within us to be, as you said earlier, the best version of ourselves in some capacity, because we all bring so many unique things to every day, every moment, every year, everything.
I think you're right. There's two things I would say in response to that. Very early on in my freediving career, long before, I didn't want any records, but I was working with a trainer who was really hell-bent on the records. I was like, I'm not really into it for that. And he looked at me and he said, you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to all the other people who haven't figured out what their special gift is. And I was like, oh, damn it. Because as soon as you tell me people that are relying on me, then that's that. The second part of that is that I was born an athlete, and I'll always be an athlete who doesn't run because of my knees. You can't tell me as the athlete, as Tanya the athlete, that I am different to anybody else, because then I will only ever be as good as the difference that I am. And especially in this sport, where what we're relying on is our human physiological blueprint. Mine is no different to yours. It's a mammalian blueprint. It's mammals, it's dolphins, it's whales, it's other air-breathing, diving mammals. We have that. If I have something that is different with my physical or physiological makeup, there's a limit. And this was my third nugget when I said I have two, maybe three. The third one that I kind of lived by, my philosophy while I was freediving, which I tend to have thrown back in my face by my husband these days, was redefine your limits. The idea is, We absolutely have limits to what we can do. And mine might be 525 feet or 6.5 minutes. It might be. But until I dig deep enough to find whatever it is that is in me to try to make that limit different, whether it's pushing harder on the bike this morning, diving deeper 15 years ago, I won't know. So yes, we have limits. The beauty is in finding out what they are. And if you throw everything at it, if you get over yourself long enough, let's be honest, ego plays a massive part. And not in the way that people immediately think when they hear me say ego, but our ego, our personal ego. if we
and
just
self-preservation in some cases.
Yes, sadly, yes. But if we get over that long enough, we can redefine our limits. I thought the very first dive I did was 100 feet. It was beyond 75 feet, which was my previous best that I had ever noticed before. Not because I had a depth gauge, but because I'd made it to a wreck that I knew was at 75 feet. I did that freediving clinic in 97 and did 100 feet. I redefined my limit that day, that moment, and I was addicted to the idea of trying and seeing how far you can go and pushing. So I lived by that. There are the days where I can't get out of bed and Paul's like, hey, redefine your limits, champ. And I'm like, you don't get to say that.
Coffee's on.
So, I can't believe that I'm different. I don't think I am. I think I have a mental strength that doesn't always do me great favors, but it's part of who I am. I think this experience has been crazy. I think the idea of being a freediver, of doing what I did it's no less crazy to me than it is to you. I am absolutely still trying to reconcile the person I am with what I have physically achieved, because it doesn't make sense. I know my weaknesses so well. I know my pitfalls. I know what a quitter I am sometimes. So the idea to me that I have done that thing is as foreign as it is to telling somebody that no, I don't jump off a rock to complete my dive. So it's meaningless sometimes unless you look at the really, really big picture. And I think that's sometimes been my frustration with the sport and the success that I've had, is that a little bit too much focus is on a number and not on getting to dig into it, dive into it in the way that we have.
That's a great place to end it. Don't you think? A couple quick things. Is there anything that you feel like we didn't cover that you want to mention?
Sure over the course of the next few days I'm like,
I know.
No,
and if I was here for another even another day, I would love to just continue going on and on. There is so much here.
I think we did well, and I think it fits with it's interesting. I was listening to the radio this morning. I can't even remember what it was, but it was NPR. And it made me think of you because, again, don't even know who said it. It was the interviewer or the interviewee, but they talked about being bold. And I was like, really?
No
kidding. Today you're going to tell me that? But I have this 10-year-old girl who is, small carbon cutout of myself, obviously. And she, we recognize our own weaknesses and pitfalls and stuff in others. She's headstrong. Oh my God. She pushes. She's amazing. She's talented. She's everything. She's bold. She is BOLD, bold. And I have to tell her, be bold. And this guy said it this morning, be bold and be true. And I was like, I have to tell Beth.
Be bold and
because
be true,
the truth part is when we get over ourselves. Like, just try. I can give you a million excuses. As I dive down the rope, I can listen to the devil the whole way down. I can turn on a dive before I've reached the depth I want to reach. And I can come back up. I've got probably a minute, maybe 30 seconds to formulate all those excuses. And I'll tell who's ever waiting for me at the top of the rope. But you know what? They're not the person that's in my head. And that's the truth part. I've watched people not achieve their potential in freediving because they have a lack of self-integrity. Because the truth is, when you get to the top and there's anybody waiting, you're so much better than them. They're all going to clap you and go, I wouldn't do it. So well done. You only made a third of your distance today. And I hand on heart can tell you that I never did that. I never turned on a dive unless it was something physical. I never turned on a dive and there was a 12-foot oceanic white-tip shark down there bumping on my rope. I was like, that's not how God wants me to die today.
So I end all conversations with this. What does it mean to you to be bold? And you might have just said it, which is okay. But
I think to be bold to me means to be honest, because I think it's so easy not to be. And I think life is so much easier when you are, and you're so much truer when you are. You realize your true potential. You realize where you truly fit. You realize who your true friends are. You realize what your true worth is, what your true journey is, like all of those things. When you do something super tough, like embrace your truth every single day, I think you're about as bold as you can be.
That's fantastic. That's great. Where can people find you? Social media?
Yes,
Are you on
at
social
Tanya
media?
Streeter.
Okay.
I'm horrible on social media.
No problem. You know what?
But I'm
Really,
there.
all people have to do is Google you, and they're going to find
It's
your
all there.
TEDx
I know
talk
the
and
next thing
all.
is like Tanya Streeter dead. I hate that. Google keeps saying I'm dead. I'm not. I'm
I know.
alive and well.
Well, there's net worth. There's always whenever. Well, no, I don't know that.
I was going to say, is there?
No, I don't know that. There probably is, because whenever I Google someone's name, it comes up like, death, husband or wife, net worth.
Yeah.
You know, that all that stuff just auto-populates. So do
Yes,
your own.
thanks, yeah.
Just
Tanya
thank you.
Streeter dead. Oh my gosh.
Thank
you're
you so
welcome.
much. No, I mean it when I say you've got to go watch No Limits. The story that she mentions about Audrey Mestre, who died while trying to break this record, is a little crazy, and it gets explored in that movie, No Limits. But watching that will also put into perspective the incredible feat of what Tanya did. And it actually shows what a free dive is, because as I said earlier, it's a bit difficult to imagine if you haven't seen it for yourself. So go watch that. Don't forget to check out my Patreon page. It's a small price to pay, just $5 to continue enjoying these conversations like this one with Tanya. I'd love to know that you're out there listening and that you want to be part of this community and help me grow the podcast. So thank you in advance. That's patreon.com/bebold. You can also connect with me by friending me on Facebook, and I am WanderGal on Instagram. For show notes, check out the BeBoldPodcast.com website for each episode and sign up for email alerts each time a new episode comes out. Those show notes also show up in whatever app you're using to listen, so you can find them there as well. You can find out more about me by visiting wanderlustandlipstick.com. Sign up for my newsletter on the Wanderlust and Lipstick site, and you'll receive a series of tips for making your travels safer. And coming up in the new year, I'll be announcing giveaways where you'll have the chance to win some goodies all for yourself. And you'll be able to find out about those in the newsletter. Check out wandertours.com if you'd like to travel with me. I've got space on our South India tour. It's a women-only tour coming up in late February, and a co-ed trip to Papua New Guinea in August of next year. Don't forget to leave me a message at 877-280-5170 so I can feature you in an end-of-year episode highlighting what you all have done to be bold. Or you can call that number and just leave a message with a question, and I'll feature that on a future episode. Ladies, don't forget to join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/BeBoldGroup. You're going to love the positivity, the encouragement, and the support from that community, which is now over 2,700 women strong. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Be Bold podcast, and until next time, be bold.